Martin, first off, let me just ask you about the internet computer. I'm not sure how deep into it you've gotten. And of course, 90 some percent of these attempts fail. But if this is one of the 10% that gets it right, it's a real game changer.
Yes, we're so early in the innovation and adoption cycle. A lot of these networks. It's a pretty exciting time. But as you're alluding to, many will fail, but some will certainly succeed. That's why we actually named our firm Cambrian after the explosion of the evolutionary explosion a few 100 million years ago. Some will persist, many will fail, but that's evolution.
I'm such a Luddite, I've been saying Cambrian. Of course it's Cambrian. I can't believe I've made that mistake at least 4 times in the last 16 minutes. But Martin, talk to me about Bitcoin, because after we got this huge CPI number, massive inflation, I mean, certainly relative to expectations, the biggest core CPI jump that we've seen since 1982, a lot of people have been messaging me, why isn't Bitcoin rising? To be fair, gold isn't rising as well, and it's thought of as an inflation hedge. But how do investors see the digital currency right now?
Well, I think there's a variety of investors with different goals, different time horizons, of course, as in many different markets. And a lot of institutional investors, will be looking at a 10-year horizon with Bitcoin as a percentage of their portfolio, looking for a hedge against a devaluation in the dollar. And this wouldn't change that thesis, of course. There will be other investors who have a much shorter term horizon. They view this as a risk asset, and they may be selling or forced to sell.
I've spent years and years interviewing, fortunately, very famous investors. Jean-Marie Eviard is one of, I think, the most famous value investors who always had a place for gold. I think he was always devoting 5 to 10% of his portfolio to the shiny metal. Are you seeing investors now adopting Bitcoin in a similar fashion?
Yes, we've seen starting about a year ago, institutional investors, family offices, starting to allocate a percentage of the liquid portfolios into Bitcoin. They're looking for uncorrelated returns and something that has scarcity value over the long term. But there's a couple of things that have changed in the last 6 months that are probably worth talking about.
Please do. Please expand.
So, yeah. So it's first it's not just Bitcoin anymore. So I think over the last 6 to 12 months, you've seen a lot of fundamental macro investors talk about Bitcoin, but over the last couple of months, you've seen trading volumes and liquidity in Ethereum start to approach that of Bitcoin, particularly on the exchanges that are used by institutional investors. So CME and Coinbase, to name 2. Ethereum recently broke all-time highs, and the data would suggest that institutions are starting to allocate small percentages to Ethereum. But I'm not aware of any announcements or papers like have been written about Bitcoin. But I would expect that to come out in the next few months.